At 0538 hours on October 14, 1944, near the Philippine Sea, the carrier deck shook under the weight of rushing boots and spinning propellers. The sun had not cleared the horizon. The sky held a thin grey band over dark water. 16 F6F Hellcats roared forward, their engines throwing a deep vibration through every metal beam. Pilots held tight to their throttles, the smell of fuel mixed with salt. The radio cracked with short instructions. Enemy scouts had been spotted. Zero fighters were climbing fast. The first Hellcat lifted away from the deck. The second followed with a snap of wind under its wings. Far ahead, small black dots grew larger. Tracers cut the early light. One pilot pushed into a dive, feeling the pressure hit his chest. The fight closed in seconds. The sound of guns filled the air. As Zero flashed past, another burst into flame. The pilots had trained for moments like this. What happened next would show that the battle at hand was only a small part of a much wider story. If you want more stories like this, make sure to subscribe, like, and share. The need for a new American carrier fighter grew fast after 1941. The Navy understood that the Pacific War required long range, strong climb, and stronger firepower. Early aircraft struggled to match the speed and agility of the Japanese Zero. The Zero could climb high with ease. It turned inside most American fighters. Pilots needed something that could take hits, strike hard, and still return home. Grumman engineers began shaping a new design in 1942. They wanted a fighter that carried a powerful engine with strong torque and steady cooling. The result was the F6F Hellcat. It used the Pratt & Whitney R2800 engine that produced more than 2,000 horsepower. Its top speed reached around 380 miles per hour. It carried 6.50 caliber machine guns. It had thick armor for pilot protection and strong wings built to survive steep dives. The Hellcat flew with a wide stance on its landing gear, which helped on carrier decks. Designers focused on pilot visibility and simple controls. The Navy wanted a machine that new pilots could handle on day one. The aircraft had long range for escort missions and deadly firepower for carrier strikes. It became clear that this fighter emerged to bridge the gap between early war losses and the new demands of island campaigns that pushed deeper into enemy territory. The first months of the Hellcat's service were not smooth. Pilots needed time to understand the aircraft's weight and power curve. Training units reported rough landings and over-rotation on takeoff. Maintenance teams noted cooling issues on long ground runs. In early tests, two aircraft were lost when braking on the deck caused nose dips. Reports stated, the aircraft responds well in glide, but reacts heavily during sudden throttle inputs. Some pilots felt unsure. They had flown lighter fighters in the past. They needed more than 50 training hours before they felt fully comfortable in the cockpit. Early missions in 1943 saw a few losses from misjudged dives or tight turns at low altitude. The Zero remained agile and quick. Japanese crews wrote that American pilots were forcing a big machine into small circles. Intelligence teams knew this was a common mistake. Pilots tried to chase Zeros in horizontal turns instead of using the Hellcat's strengths. Enemy observers mocked the new fighter in early notes. One Japanese aviator wrote, "The blue fighter is heavy. It cannot follow us in a true fight." These struggles pushed instructors to adjust tactics and rework flight plans. With time, the early misconceptions faded. Crews soon discovered what the Hellcat did best. The fighter climbed with strong vertical power. It held energy well in dives. It had tough armor that saved pilots from shots that would destroy lighter planes. Most important, it had 6 heavy machine guns that fired more than 1,200 rounds in a single burst. Instructors taught pilots to avoid flat turns. They guided them to use altitude, speed, and surprise. The Hellcat worked best when it attacked from above. Pilots learned to pull up sharply after firing, and then drop again from a higher point. The aircraft also held steady aim during high-speed runs. It could take damage and still fly home. Radar guidance from carriers helped pilots intercept enemy formations beyond visual range. Once pilots understood these strengths, they gained confidence. They used the aircraft's 1,000-mile range to escort bombers deep into enemy space. Crews began to trust the Hellcat more than any earlier fighter. They saw that this machine did not need to match the Zero's turning skills. It only needed to fight on its own terms. In late 1943, the Hellcat saw its first major test near the Gilbert Islands. A group of 24 Hellcats from two carriers moved in to protect strike aircraft, headed toward enemy positions on Tarawa. The morning sky held broken clouds and shifting winds. Radar picked up 20 Japanese fighters closing from the west. The American formation tightened. Lieutenant Mark Dawson led the lead group. He ordered his pilots to climb. When the enemy broke through the clouds, the Hellcats dropped him from above. A Zero made a quick turn toward one of the bombers. Dawson fired a burst. The Zero fell away trailing smoke. Another group of Zeros tried to cut upward, but lost energy in the climb. The Hellcats used strong diving speed to push the fight downward. Short calls came over the radio. To on your right, brake now. In 10 minutes, the fight ended. 15 enemy aircraft were destroyed. One Hellcat was lost. Pilots who returned felt the weight of what they had seen. They understood that speed and firepower made the difference. In June 1944, the Hellcat played a central role in the Battle of the Philippine Sea, often called the Great Marianas Turkish Shoot by American pilots. More than 200 Hellcats launched from multiple carriers to defend the fleet. Japanese carriers sent waves of fighters and bombers, the sky filled with swirling formations. Ensign Henry Lewis later said, "There were planes everywhere. I focused on the nearest shape and fired. Hellcats formed layered defenses at different altitudes. Radar teams directed them into enemy paths. A group of 40 Hellcats intercepted the first wave of Japanese bombers north of Saipan. Clouds broke open with flashes of gunfire. Many enemy pilots struggled with navigation and training shortages. Their aircraft lacked the protection needed to survive heavy fire. In one intense moment, a Hellcat squadron cut through a bomber group and scattered it across miles of open sky. Reports show that American fighters shot down more than 300 enemy aircraft during this battle. The Hellcat became the symbol of wide air control. Another encounter took place in early 1945 during operations near Iwo Jima. A squadron of Hellcats escorted bombers on a low cloud day. The sea surface appeared rough and uneven from above. Japanese fighters attempted a surprise attack from the sun. The bombers called for help. 12 Hellcats turned into the light. Their eyes strained to see shapes through glare. The lead pilot shouted, "Climb now." The formation rose hard. A Zero overshot them. A Hellcat lined up and fired a burst that tore into the engine cowling of the enemy fighter. More aircraft joined the fight. The battle pushed down to 3,000 feet. The air filled with smoke trails and sharp turns. Pilots felt tight pressure in their arms from constant movement. One bomber later reported, "The fighters saved us. They held the enemy off us the whole way." The Hellcats returned to the carrier with bullet holes in wings and fuselage. The crews counted these marks as proof of the fighters' durability. It became clear that the Hellcat shaped many victories across the Central Pacific. The Hellcat affected the war in more than combat moments. Production lines built more than 12,000 aircraft by 1945. Factories ran long hours. Supply teams moved engines, guns, armor plates, and landing gear across the country. Carrier groups depended on steady fuel and spare parts. The Navy trained thousands of pilots using clear step-by-step courses. Every pilot needed flight hours, gunnery practice, carrier landings, and formation drills. By 1944, entire carrier air groups used Hellcats as their main fighters. They flew more than 60% of American carrier sorties in the Pacific. Japanese forces struggled to match this scale. Their pilots faced shortages in fuel, aircraft, and training. Many new Japanese pilots entered combat with fewer than 150 flight hours. The gap grew larger every month. The Hellcat's steady presence gave American fleets a strong shield. It ensured that large operations across islands could continue with fewer interruptions from enemy aircraft. Enemy pilots felt the pressure of this new fighter quickly. Many Japanese diaries mention the dark blue shape that appeared from above with sudden bursts of fire. One pilot wrote, "The American machine takes hits and keeps flying." Another described the fear of meeting a Hellcat at high altitude. Japanese crews sometimes called it the Blue Wall because they felt it blocked their path to bombers and ships. Some pilots reported they could not outclimb it in steep angles. Others said their rounds bounced off its armor. The effect on morale grew stronger through 1944. Many Zero pilots flew with caution. They understood that one mistake against a Hellcat could be final. The steady losses created doubt inside squadrons. Even experienced pilots admitted that the newer American tactics forced them to change habits built over years. Late war improvements shaped the Hellcat into its final form. Engineers added better radar pods for night operations. Some variants carried rockets under the wings for ground attack. Others used reinforced structures for longer range missions. Small adjustments to the engine and cooling system improved reliability. The F6F model became the most common version. It gained more durable surfaces and improved visibility from the cockpit. Pilots used new tactics that mixed radar interception with coordinated carrier launches. Training focused on night fighting, escort paths, and steep dive strikes against fortified positions. The Hellcat also took on roles in anti-submarine patrols. It carried depth charges or bombs for those missions. The aircraft kept its core strengths in speed, firepower, and toughness through every upgrade. The Hellcat achieved an impressive combat record. It claimed more than 5,000 enemy aircraft destroyed across the Pacific, while losing far fewer of its own. It protected carriers, escorted bombers, and gained control of major battle spaces. Pilots trusted it to carry them through long missions and bring them home after taking hits. Commanders counted on its range and dependability during moving front lines. Early doubts faded by 1944. Even enemy pilots offered respect. A Japanese veteran once said, "When we saw the new American fighter, we knew the balance had shifted." The Hellcat proved that strong engineering, steady training, and clear tactics could overcome the challenges of early war losses. Its legacy rests in its record, its durability, and the confidence it gave to every pilot who climbed into its cockpit.